Hey gamers, welcome to Elixirs and Eatery's Game Night with me, our host, MC Squared. This is a new video series that we're going to be starting out, where once a month I check out a new game, review it, tell you a little bit about it, and then you guys will have the opportunity to come and play it in the restaurant anytime you like. So, join us for this new series, and bear with me, because the first one's probably going to be a little bit shaky. But I feel like you can handle that, especially if, you've tuned into me plenty of times. Alright. Game we're going to start with this month, the very first one. It's actually a new game called Progerss, Evolution of Technology. You can see the box sitting there right behind me. This is a game from the lovely folks over at Passport. We did the release party for this game actually earlier this year. They were kind enough to leave this with us, so we're going to go ahead and do that one because it's a lot of fun. I've gotten a couple chances to play it, so now I'm going to tell you guys about it, and then if you like it, you can come check it out. Play it here at AFK anytime you like, as always with any of our rental games. So, the theme of this game is pretty self-explanatory by the name of it, Progerss. You are building technology from basically the beginning of mankind's history all the way up to modern day tech. So you start with the very basics like learning how to read and write and go all the way up to modern day tech. Games that are similar to thematically would be things like innovation, civilization, things along that line, just spanning throughout human history. So that's the theme of the game. It's a lot of fun. And before I start getting into the meat of the mechanics, I will compare it to some things. So if you are familiar with many popular board games, you'll have a good place to go in. If you're familiar with either Seven Wonders, Race for the Galaxy, or the previously mentioned Innovation, a lot of these concepts will be pretty straightforward. It's a really good game. It's about hand management, thing you're going to want to look at is the player board. Everyone, when they start out, picks a color of cubes. You can see I've got some green cubes laid out right here. They are laid into the board. I'm going to pick up the board and show it to you. So, the symbols on the board, what they mean is, the top one is how many cards you can have in your hand. You'll get dealt a hand of cards at the beginning of the game. You can see there's numbers up here, and as your little cube moves along this progress track, you can increase the number of things. Well, that'll get explained how to increase those in a minute. Just telling you what the symbols mean when we see them now. This one here, the second one, is how many cards you draw whenever you draw cards as an action. We'll talk about that when we go over the actions. The next one here is your shuffle draw. So one of the actions that you can take on your turn is shuffle the discard piles of decks back into their respective deck and then draw a number of cards. You'll see that there on the shuffle draw. The next one is quick draw. When you quick draw, you draw cards and then discard them, but it doesn't end your turn like normal drawing does. We'll talk about that again in a second as well. Just over here, the little gold star is the number of actions you can take in a turn. Action economy, like in any game, is pretty important, so it's good to be able to take a decent number of actions. The next one here, the plus sign, that is how many projects you can be working on at once, how many things you can have in development. And the last one there is how long it takes for you to develop new technology. So as you can see, like everywhere else, the numbers go up. This one, the number goes down because it makes so that you research technology faster the more that you increase that. So that's your little player board. That's what you start with, and that's what those symbols mean. Now, you've probably inferred from seeing those that the game is played in actions. At the beginning of the game, you get a number of cards in your hand. First, you randomize a starting player, like you do in every game. Find a various way to decide who goes first. the first player gets a handful of cards, and as you go around the table, the subsequent players get more cards and then discard down to the same starting number. The cards all look something like this. This is one of the most basic cards. This is an Age 1 card. It's called Writing. The way to read the cards is, of course, the name of the cards on the top, the symbol up on the top there next to the name is the category that's in. There's 3 categories: science, technology, and culture. Or science, industry, and culture, I should say. Industry is better than technology. Science, industry, and culture. This one's a science card, the little atomic symbol there. And this card is writing. It's the most basic of science. So, the next thing is the information on the side. That is what you get once you have figured out this thing. So once you've figured out writing, this will permanently increase your quick draw stat that I mentioned earlier. And down here on the bottom, one thing that you'll be able to do over the course of this game is use cards in your hand to generate general knowledge. That number is how much general knowledge a card generates, and this number here is how much knowledge you need to be able to research this thing. So a lot of that probably didn't make sense just yet because I haven't gone over how to do some things. So we're going to start now by going over the parts of a turn. On a turn, you start with 2 actions. The actions are, you can either draw cards is the most basic action. There's decks of cards for every age. You can do a shuffle draw, which is the one I talked about earlier, where you shuffle a card's discard pile into the deck and then draw cards off the top. There's the quick draw I talked about, and then there's the regular draw. The regular draw option gets you the most cards, but that also ends your turn, so it's hard to draw cards at the beginning and then do other things with them without using the shuffle draw or the quick draw. So that's why those other 2 are important as opposed to just the regular card drawing mechanic. The next most common action is one of the 2 ways that you start to build technologies, and that is to research a technology. To research a technology, you don't actually need to meet any of the requirements. You just put it into development by playing it here. So for example, if I wanted to develop that writing card I played earlier and I didn't have the resource, I would play the writing card in front of me and get out. We've got a bag full of cubes over here that represent things. And we'd start by referencing that number that I showed you earlier, the one with the downward facing arrow, and it starts at 4. So I'd put 4 black cubes over here on the card, and then at the beginning of all future turns, I would remove a cube from it, and once I remove the last cube, then I have developed that technology without having to spend any resource on it. It just takes a lot of time. But that's a way to do it without circumventing the need for resources, and as technologies get more advanced, the requirements get steeper and steeper, so if you didn't get something's prerequisite, you can still always build a thing that you might need down the line. So that's what that's for. The faster way to get a new technology is to just discover it. And you discover something by meeting the requirements on the bottom of the card. There's 2 ways to meet those requirements. A lot of cards will have requirements like this here, philosophy. It's a culture card. There you can see it says either you need 5 culture points or to have the philosophy technology researched. If I have the philosophy technology researched, I can just play this for free, and it means I'm done and I don't need anything else. The other way to play it is to get 5 culture tech. There's 2 ways to get that information. The primary way is I talked about earlier, the little brain down here is worth general knowledge. You can just discard cards from your hand to get that much general knowledge, and you can apply that general knowledge to anything that you want to build. So this one would be worth 1, but I've got some others over here that are worth 2, 3, 4, etc. So you would need to discard 5 total of those to be able to play this card, and you could just discover it immediately. But because your hand size is limited and it's hard to get to draw cards, that's not a viable long-term strategy. It's a way to get started early on, but not necessarily something you'll be able to do all the time. The other way is that some cards will reward you with knowledge tokens that look like this. When you get a knowledge token, you've got it forever once you've completed the technology. And then the other side of the token is just to show you've exhausted it, because on your turn, you can expend these for a point of that knowledge. So if I had this one, if I only had 4 cards worth of general knowledge to discard, that would be fine, because I could also spend this token, flip it over and exhaust it for the turn, and use that to discover this technology instantly. So there's lots of ways to go about putting in new technology, and even if you find yourself a little bit behind, it's pretty easy to catch up a lot of the times. Some of the cards have symbols on them with the next era, and once enough cards of the next era have been played, we unlock Age 2. So we've seen some of the ones from Age 1 that are pretty simple, and they even do get more advanced. Like here's an industry card from Age 1 that is still pretty complex. You can see it has multiple requirements here. You need to both have masonry and agriculture, so you have to have all of the requirements on the card need to be met, but you can mix and match. For example, if I had masonry completed but not agriculture, I could only need to generate 2 industry knowledge or general knowledge to be able to play this card, because I've already met half of the requirements. So you could do a split like that to get things advanced, for if you were only advancing down one path and wanted to do something like that. So next, for Age 2, of course the technology gets more advanced. It's a few centuries later after basic writing. We've made it to newspapers. And newspapers, as you can see, the numbers go up. It's worth 3 general knowledge, but takes 10 knowledge worth of things to build, has 2 different requirements, and the requirements are from 2 different schools. You need 5 industrial knowledge and 5 cultural knowledge to make newspapers. And here's the symbol I was talking about before. This one's a 3, because once you've played enough cards, you unlock the next age of technology, and once you've gone far enough, older technology starts to go away. So based on the number of players, once you've got enough of these symbols on cards in play, Age 3 will be opened up to everyone, and Age 1 will be shunted away forever, so you won't be able to play from that anymore. And this goes until that has happened to advance to Age 4 a couple times. That is normally when the game ends, at the end of Age 3 for the base game. The Age 3 cards, like I was saying earlier, the early 20th century, things like thermodynamics and evolutionary theory and all sorts of things. And those cards are worth, everything. The way to win the game is to acquire victory points. Victory points are the little harp symbols. They appear on a lot of cards. The technologies themselves will generate them. Additionally, all of the progress tracks on your board here, as your cube moves down the track, it'll pass some of the little harp symbols, and those will be worth victory points. There's also 3 additional tracks that are on another board in the box over here. Grab that out for you. There is the royalty track, the warriors track, and the civilization track. Many of the cards will give these as a reward, and as you play them as a reward, your cube will move down the track, and based on which rank you are, if there's 3 different players, if you're first, you get a number of points as dictated by down here. Goes up to 4 players, so if there's 4 of us, the first player would get 11, next is 7, 4, 2, so on. So that's the other real solid way to get victory points. And you just play through this process, upgrading your technology as you go along, trying to get victory points, trying to build interesting chains of technology throughout time, and it's a lot of fun. And if we go into Age 4, you find a lot of interesting things, like The radio is an age 4 beginning card. Then you can find things like Atomic Theory, which is an end of age card. The television, all that stuff is there, and there's a lot of interesting and funny, if you don't mind a little bit of off-color humor when really analyzed social commentary in this game that I really like. For example, the radio is an industrial technology where the television is a cultural one, and in order to develop the television, you don't need the radio, you don't need other things. In order to develop television, you need sports. Sports is the technology required to develop television. So that tells you something about what the creators of this game maybe think about how and why technology has evolved the way it has. But that's neither here nor there. It was just a fun little add-on that I thought. It's got a lot of cool little stuff with it. As always, it's got great reference cards that tell you exactly about all the actions, how to do them, how the skills work. It's a really well put together game. It's clever. The artwork is really great. An average game of it takes about an hour to 90 minutes depending on what you use. The game also has a couple other built-in regular expansions, like Leaders, where you can, at the beginning of the game, choose a random philosopher to represent you. I have here Zoroaster, who is, I assume, an ancient historical figure of note. I am not an expert on ancient historical figures, so I couldn't tell you. But, however, if you want to continue to upgrade them over the course of the eras, you can, and in sticking with the Men with Epic Beards theme, you can go to ones like Leonardo da Vinci, which I have here, and they're worth points, and they've got special powers and things as well. And there's a lot of cool interactions in this game, so if you want to check it out, you can come down to AFK Elixirs and Eatery here in Renton and ask for Progerss, Evolution of Technology. Check it out. If I'm here, I'll be happily teach you how to play. So bring your friends, and we'll have it available for you. Thanks for checking out our new show, watching the video, guys. We're going to do our best to get our hands on a new game every month and make videos for it and put those up on our YouTube channel here so you guys can see some stuff about new games. Come into AFK, try it out. Our open board game night is Tuesday night, but we're open every day on weekdays from 5 to 1 a.m. and on Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays from 11 a.m. till 2 a.m. So there's plenty of time for you guys to come and check it out, try some of our food, try some of our drinks, try some of our games, and we'll see you guys next time. My name is MC Squared, but you can just call me E. Good night, guys.